Hi everyone, my name is Shelby Nolan, and I did my country presentation on the country of Zimbabwe. This next slide offers a little background behind the population of Zimbabwe and some different rates. So the total population is around 12.5 million. Out of this amount of people, 39% are considered undernourished. Okay. There is about a 9.6% mortality rate in children under 5. So, this is the amount of children who have disease in this country. And then the amount of death in the country for children under 5 is a rate of about 3.6%. And then 24% of children are considered as with stunted growth. Now, these graphs underneath the statistics just kind of show the rates over the past several years and show the increase in the amount of undernourishment in the population, along with the percentage of wasting, as seen the highest and lowest poverty populations in the country. Now, the stunting percent has actually decreased in the past several years, which is a step of improvement in Zimbabwe as a whole. The following slides contain cultural issues that impact nutrition in Zimbabwe, and the major religion in Zimbabwe is Christianity. This makes up 87% of the population. Muslim, Buddhist, Jews, and Hindus make up the rest of the population. And really, the only dietary restrictions of the Christian population is during Lent, and the community refrains from eating meat on Fridays during this time. This is a 40-day period and really is the only dietary restriction seen in this population. So, Zimbabwe is pretty much a waterlocked country. There are surrounding areas, but Africa itself is pretty much waterlocked. So, there was a lot of migration from Germany, France, Britain, and Asia. So, there's a lot of influence in the types of foods that are eaten in Zimbabwe. Now, some of the staples of Zimbabwe are pretty common to foods that are found in the US, but just with less seasonings, and they're just very pure. So, Boer's Wars is a type of sausage that is a common staple in Zimbabwe. This is a beef and pork sausage that is pretty much everywhere on the dinner table in Zimbabwe. The next is known as sedza. This is a cornmeal type of porridge that is served for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's a very, very popular menu item. This is very cheap and it is served often with kale, which in Zimbabwe is known as rape. It's also compared to turnip greens here in the US. And it's also served with a beef stew type of protein. And then milk tart is also very common. This is a very cheap dish. It is most often associated as bread pudding here in the US, but really it's made with eggs, milk, some cornmeal, and some butter. So it is very cheap, but also provides a lot of extra calories at meals. And then the last staple of Zimbabwe is known as cassava. This is a type of flour that is made from wild radish. This is incorporated into the binding of sausage. It's also incorporated into sedza and then is used as thickeners for meals as well. Typical eating patterns in Zimbabwe include a communal style meal. So people usually congregate together and eat their meals all together at once. People usually eat from one dish instead of using multiple dishes. And as you can tell from the picture, this population usually does not use utensils. So the foods that are eaten are usually finger type foods. They may use like a flatbread to scoop up their sedza and rape or their beef porridge, or they may just take a bite of their milk tart. So usually foods are not eaten with utensils. And then sedza, as I said before, is incorporated into breakfast meals, lunch meals, and dinner meals. So it is included in every meal of the day because it is cheap and it is very filling. In 2016, El Nino swept across Zimbabwe and caused major droughts in the area. So this directly affected the type of produce that was produced. It dried up all of the crops. And also, as you can tell from the picture, a lot of animals that were used as agricultural purposes ran out of water. They didn't have food, so they all pretty much died. And so it really affected the community and caused a lot of malnutrition and caused rates to more than double within 8 months of 2016 after the drought. Because of this, the government abandoned grain exports because of the amount of decrease of grain within the country. So this really affected their income within the country for grains. The main agricultural products found in Zimbabwe include maize, ground nuts, grains and beans, vegetables, mostly greens, and then also meat and milk. So this is within the country. And then exported products include tobacco, which, as you can see from the picture, is a large source of income for the country. Zimbabwe is the third largest producer of tobacco in the world, and 60% of the income from the country from exports is from tobacco alone. And then also there is cotton, raw sugar, tea and coffee, and maize as well. And as you can see from the types of products produced in Zimbabwe above, you can note that a lot of these were affected by the drought. So that is why the rates of malnutrition are so high in Zimbabwe, because they're not able to produce as much as they once were before the drought. As a result of the drought, there is now a lot of different deficiencies found within Zimbabwe. This includes vitamin A deficiencies in 1 in 4 children in Zimbabwe. Also, 72% of the population have an iron deficiency, with only 4% of children having minimally acceptable diets, which is very scary to look at. The root causes of these nutritional problems fall within 5 different categories. Mainly, educational issues include inadequate knowledge of water safety, hygiene, and sanitation. Economic issues include basically just a really unstable and volatile economic system in Zimbabwe. This has to deal with the government, which is in turmoil right now. So they don't have a lot of support from the government, which directly affects their economy. Also, the drought had a lot to do with the decrease in income within the country. Social issues include there again poverty and unemployment. Also, this area is very high in AIDS and HIV rates. Political issues, which basically is that government turmoil and the lack of support that we talked about before. And then geographic and climate issues do include the drought that was experienced in 2016, which directly affected the decrease in agricultural practices. This next slide covers a wide variety of nutrition organizations found within the country. So the first 2 programs are known as nutrition monitoring programs. The first one is the Zero Hunger Strategic Review, and this was created by the World Food Program and also the government of Zimbabwe. And this was created to provide an overview of the food and nutrition security within the country, and then it also provides specific demographics to understand what causes food insecurity and also the severity of the food insecurity found. The next type of program is the National Nutrition Surveillance and Survey Program. This was created by the Food and Nutrition Collective along with the Ministry of Health and Child Care, and this also reviews the different demographics found within Zimbabwe that affect food insecurity and looks for the areas of most nutrition deficits in the country. The next few programs were created to address specific nutrition problems within the country. The first one is the Community Food Nutrition Program, which began in 1988, and this was funded through the government of Zimbabwe, which you can see the government of Zimbabwe's crest in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and also with the help of the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. The main target of this program was to improve food production and also to increase nutrition within the child population. So the program monitors child growth, and it also provides a nutrition education aspect to the community, which focuses on increasing food production. The Food and Nutrition Security Policy was also created by the government of Zimbabwe, and this was created to promote and ensure adequate food and nutrition security for all the people within the community of Zimbabwe. This program was later known as the National Nutrition Strategy in 2014, and this aimed to provide a broader goal of implementing those interventions, which extended not only to nutrition and food practices, but also to health services, water and sanitation, and also adequate nutrition. There are several government ministries who are partnered with UNICEF to provide supplemental feeding programs within the country. These basically are initiated by several non governmental agencies, and they are created to reduce the amount of malnutrition during drought emergencies and just provide supplemental meals and different foods to those families that are in those impoverished communities. And then the final program is from USAID, which is the United States Agency for International Development. And this Food for Peace program provides both short term food assistance and long term developmental food security programs to the communities in Zimbabwe. And this organization actually has contributed to around $127 million already in emergency food assistance since the drought of 2016. So it has provided a lot of needed resources for the country. And then USAID also provides nutrition and health support, access to safe drinking water, and also seeds and livestock support so that they can promote that recovery of the agricultural system within the country. This final slide talks about a nutrition intervention that was implemented in Zimbabwe, and this was basically an introduction of fish farming practices in that community. And the purpose of this intervention was to implement this fish farming practice as a way to increase both food security and also to generate employment within the country. So in Zimbabwe, fish farming is mainly brought about by non governmental organizations, and Zimbabwe actually houses 60% of the dammed water within the Southern Africa area. So this possesses the largest freshwater fish farm in Africa. So it's a great way to boost the economy in that area. Also, networking with other areas within Africa, such as Tanzania, Nigeria, Ghana, these places have fish farming practices that have been around for several years. So, networking with these countries will produce the best effects for Zimbabwe. So, the results of this intervention led to improvements in food security. It also led to improvements in household income and employment regeneration. The fish produced from these fish farms is sold in local markets, so it helps boost the economy within the community, and it's also even exported to other areas of Africa and also to different countries. So it's a great way to increase the economy and boost funds within the country, both internally and externally. I think that finding different ways to improve agricultural practices within Zimbabwe is the key to solving malnutrition within the country. I also think that the more that these outside organizations can help the country by providing funds, by providing clean water sources and nutrition education, this can really help the community solve the nutrition problem and work towards that goal of decreasing the rates of malnutrition in the country. So I definitely think that Zimbabwe is on the right track. And I think that by incorporating different interventions such as this fish farming practice can really help to solve those issues within the country.